I always remember and really like the line, like a bunch of delirious 10-year-olds. I remember that part of it.
Well, if you watch the replay, Jackson, the next time, Ben Zobrist was playing left field.
Hmm.
And I happened to look up as I watch everyone starting to run on the field. And I looked out to left. Ben had the game winning hit, remember, the double in the top of the
Yep.
10th inning down the left field line. And he's running in, and he just jumps up in the air, and his arms and his legs are going in four different directions. And he is so happy he doesn't even have any control of any of his limbs. And that's where the delirious 10-year-old line came from. I looked at him, I almost laughed. I love Ben Zobrist too. He was such a great guy, and he was the MVP of the World Series. But to see him so happy made me happy, and I was glad to make that call.
I remember exactly, yeah, throwing the glove up. He had his arms in the air, was running,
Yeah.
was great. I also remember when it was the day before Halloween in Game 5 against the Indians when the Cubs had to win it at Wrigley. I remember I was with my dad because it was Halloween. We were driving down to one of the places where they had Halloween events and whatnot, but we were listening to your call on the radio, and I remember just hanging on to every word as Aroldis Chapman got the 3 inning save in Game 5 to shut things down. Um,
And there was a ball that David Ross dropped over by the dugout, and Anthony Rizzo caught it in midair. And I remembered Bob Boone and Pete Rose having a similar play back in the 1980 World Series. I was happy to have that recalled. So that comes from being a lifelong fan and just following the game like an avid follower of the game. So every once in a while, all of that homework that you do, Jackson, pays off, and you get a chance to use that knowledge at the right time.
And that's just one of the many moments you've called. You've been a part of no hitters. You've called, the 98 home run chase. You've called in 2001 when Sosa ran around the bases with the flag. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about some of those moments in the beginning of your Cubs career and kind of how they've shaped where it's gone to now?
Sure. I think one that we should mention right away is the 20 strikeout game by Kerry Wood,
Yep.
May of 1998. It came right out of nowhere. It was his fifth big league start. Uh, Nobody in America even knew about Kerry Wood, and now here he is setting an all-time National League record, striking out 20 Houston Astros, among them great ball players, Hall of Famer Jeff Bagwell. I think he's in the Hall, right? And Craig Biggio.
And
They
Biggio.
both should be if they're not in there. But they were at Moises Alou was part of that
Yep.
lineup. Derek Bell, some really good hitters. This was a division championship team, and Kerry Wood just throwing 100 miles an hour, great control. The breaking ball was breaking like a wiffle ball without any holes in it when you threw it into the wind
Yeah.
as a kid. Remember those?
Yeah.
It's breaking 3 or 4 feet. That's what his ball was doing. So that was a great thrill for me to see his 20 strikeout game, which remains a record for a 9 inning game. Just a great, great thrill. And he's also a great person. And I just saw him over the weekend at the Cubs convention. Good people, Kerry Wood. But the Sammy Sosa home run chase special, I believe that in the 1994 season, when the strike canceled the end of the year and the World Series, I think we lost a lot of fans. I think the great home run chase of 1998 between Sosa and McGwire brought a lot of fans back. I really do. And I think perhaps some of us, me included, but there were guys like Jack Buck, Bob Bucher, John Miller, veteran great announcers that didn't really bring up the fact that something was fishy, maybe regarding performance enhancing drugs. We didn't know it. We knew it was exciting. We knew it was dramatic and historic. Sammy Sosa hit 20 home runs in the month of June. Think about that one for a minute. There's only 30 days, 30 days in June, and he had 20 home runs. But I think that the fact that both men shattered the old record of 61 set by Roger Maris way back in 1961, had one of the guys, Jackson, broken the mark on the last day by hitting number 62, nobody would have been quite as suspicious. But the fact that both McGwire and Sosa broke the old mark of Maris with about 3 weeks to go McGuire ended up with 70, Sosa 66. A year or two later, I think 3 years later, 2001, Barry Bonds hit 73. Okay, we got it. Something
Yeah.
fishy is going on here. But we probably all should have been more, what's the word, cognizant of
Hmm.
what was transpiring. I wasn't. I knew it was as thrilling as anything I'd ever been through. And very selfishly, let me just point out this. My calls on Cubs radio were being picked up all over the nation, on sometimes on ESPN television, but on ESPN radio, on radio stations, sports stations all over the country. I'm getting phone calls from Rhode Island and Oregon and North Carolina and everywhere else in between to be a guest to talk about Sosa. Finally, I had to stop doing them.
Yeah.
It got to be out of hand. I was getting 2 or 3 calls a day.
Wow.
And what I'm trying to say is it kind of put me on the map and gave me a little bit of
Hmm.
recognition beyond the city limits of Chicago. And that was a very cool thing. I'm being very honest, even if it sounds a little self-serving, but it was special for me.
And well, you were a part of calling Mark's 62nd, correct? Because it was Cubs Cardinals.
A line drive to left off Steve Traxel. That's
Wow.
right. Um, uh,
Barely got over the wall.
uh, yes, I remember it very well. And it left. I had no time to think about the call. It could be number 62, slice of history and a magical moment, I think is what I said. A magical moment in St. Louis, Mark McGuire. I forget exactly what I said, but yep, we were there. I did my best, and that's all you can do on one of those
Yeah.
moments. You know it's coming. Try not to get too excited, because that
Mhm.
will be a disaster. Trust me on that one. Try to keep your voice under control. You don't want to scratch. That's happened to some really good announcers at some embarrassing times, and it happens.
Yeah.
So try not to let it happen.
And it must have been really nice to see Sammy back at the Cubs convention, especially after issuing his apology and the team welcoming back. It must have been so great to see him back, supporting and with the Cubs again.
It was. And I was backstage. We were both waiting to be introduced to the audience during the opening ceremonies. And he saw me and hey, Pat, hey, Pat. He comes over, gives me a big hug. I love Sammy Sosa. I never had one problem with him. I know that some members of the media did not find him their favorite, but I got along great with him. And yeah, we were buddies, and it was great to see him. I'm glad he's back.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about, some of the player relationship aspects? How is it for a broadcaster, getting to know the players over the years and speaking with them? How does that influence your broadcasting? And are there any, specific memories or times with players that stand out?
Well, I think I try to be accurate with everything that happens in a game, and I try to be fair. I don't want to take pot shots. I don't want to be too critical. I know how difficult these games are to play. When you get to a certain level, all I did was play 1 year in college, but I played amateur ball, baseball, and basketball through high school. I was a good player, I just wasn't great. These guys are all the elite athletes of wherever you're from. These were the best players in the county, the best players in the state, best players maybe in the region of a 4 or 5 state area. These are big league ball players. There's less than 1,000 of them playing at any one time for all 30 teams. You figure there's 26 guys on each team, 30 teams. You do the math. That's, I believe, 780 players in the majors. So I try to be fair, but not just fair to players. I try to be fair to umpires and managers and official scorers and coaches, their decisions. If they wave a guy and he gets thrown out of the plate,
Mhm.
hey, he thought that it was going to be a case where the runner was going to beat the throw. It didn't happen. So I don't take pot shots. I try to be accurate and describe what happens and be fair. And that's where I leave it. I don't get too close to the players. For one thing, Jackson, right now there's a major generation gap between me and even the oldest big league ball players of about 30 years.
Mhm.
So I don't go palling around. I don't go out and have a beer or two the way I used to when I was younger. So I don't hang out with the players, After a game's over, I pretty much go back to the hotel. I call my wife and I shut it down for the night, listen to a little music maybe, and play on the computer, and I'm done. And then I get my rest and come back tomorrow. I don't spend a lot of time in the clubhouse. I don't get to know the players all that well. If they want to be friendly and engage me in conversation, fine. But again, I try to be cordial and professional and accurate and fair. And those are the words that I live by.
Hmm. And you mentioned a little bit about the schedule going back to the hotel. How is that? Because it's definitely not a work schedule that a lot of people across America have, a broadcasting schedule. What is it like in the season, being away from family, being away from loved ones, and traveling on the road with the team? How hard is that to do and, still maintain your professionalism in your job?
It's very hard. It's probably the most difficult part of the job. I do not like being away from my wife. I've been married to a great girl, Trish, for 37 years,
Wow.
and I miss my two kids. I miss some things when they grew up, but they are now in their mid 30s. But I wasn't doing it just for myself. I was out there for them too. So that's something I've always kept in mind. When you're married and you have kids like I did, you need a job. And I had a job that I liked. Unfortunately, that job kept me on the road for 80 to 90 to 100 days a year. But that's part of the gig. The flip side of that is when the season is over on or about August 1st, or if you go into the playoffs in later October, you're off. You're off for all the major holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and I don't have to go back to work until right around March the 1st. But I'm kind of used to it now. I get games off, time off that I never used to get. But the time away is difficult, undeniably, and I think it is for a lot of people.
And then on the other flip side of it, you get to experience the travel and see all these amazing places and stadiums as well. I'm trying to eventually I'll get to all 30. I think I'm at 14 right now. But do you have any specific places that stand out as some of your favorite road environments that you would like to call games in or watch games in?
I would say Wrigley Field is my favorite place. Busch Stadium in St. Louis, because of the Cubs' rivalry with the Cardinals, that's always special. Dodger Stadium has aged so gracefully. It's hard to believe that ballpark was built in 1962. It's still charming and full of 50,000 fans every time the Cubs are there. Yankee Stadium is a thrill. I don't want to leave any out. To be not corny about it, but very honest, if it's a big league game and I'm there and I have the awesome responsibility of being the voice of the Cubs, I'm pretty much happy to be in any ballpark at any time. So I think I mentioned some of my favorites. I may have left out one or two. The Bay Area is special because I have family in that area still and I get to see them. But if it's a major league game and they've given me the job of being the play by play guy, bring it on.
Yeah. What makes the Cubs so special? Because you've been with the Twins, you've been with the Brewers. Like I said, you started out west and then kind of have been with the Midwest for your broadcasting career. Why the Cubs? What has been so special where you've stuck around for 30 years?
The fans. I wanted to be in college. I wanted to be the voice of one of the great American sports franchises, and not to criticize Minnesota or Milwaukee, where I worked in the majors before. But when I got the Cubs job, that was the job I was waiting for, to be the voice of one of the great American sports franchises. The Cubs are it. The fan base, the enormity of the city, the passion for the fans, the ballpark. Wrigley Field is wonderful to call your office, which I've been lucky enough to do for going on 30 years. The history of the team, the franchise, the great players that have come before at Wrigley, and the broadcasters as well, Jack Brickhouse and Harry Carey, among others. So those are some of the reasons. And by the way, they pay well.
Yeah.
But it was not a stepping stone when I got here. I made the point of saying I didn't come here to get a stepping stone to go somewhere else. I'm here. I'm going to stay here a while, and I have, and I'm very happy about that. And I have no plans to ever broadcast anywhere else for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, that's awesome to hear as a Cubs fan. Because you can tell, especially when the difference between a broadcaster who's there for a pay cut versus one who's there, and is very passionate, and your passion and your voice comes across when you make your calls. Um, I have one question about, so if there's something now in the back half of your career that you've learned that you wish you could tell yourself in the beginning, what would that be?
The back half, as you said that, I chuckled to myself in my mind. The back half, you mean the final 30 years of my career coming up? No, what would I tell myself? I don't know. I've worked with some amazing people. I really have. Bob Euchre in Milwaukee, and Ron Santo, and Harry Carey, and now Ron Coomer. And I worked with Al McGuire in basketball. You think about that. That's like a who's who in Midwest broadcasters over the years. So I've been very, very lucky. I wouldn't change a whole lot of things about it. I've tried to be as professional as I possibly could. I try to be as prepared as I can be every single day. I don't really know. I mean, you look at my career, I've been in the big leagues since opening day of 1983. I'll bet that was a few years before you were even born, Jackson. Quite a few years, actually.
Yeah, it definitely
um,
was. Try about 20.
yeah. See, so someday you'll know what I'm talking about. But I'm in my late 60s now, and I just I don't know. I think I've covered a World Series. I got the chance to be the first Cubs announcer to broadcast a World Series championship, and I got the chance to broadcast more Cubs games than any man ever. I mean, I'm very proud and very happy to say that. So I don't have a whole lot of regrets. I'm almost like Frank Sinatra. Regrets, I've had a few, but too few to mention. I almost feel like that, really.
So, what advice would you have then for others that are trying to get into broadcasting or get into sports media? What piece of advice would you say to them?
Practice. Practice. If you want to do play by play, start practicing right now, because you're going to need to do 200 to 300 games before you even feel like you're ready to throw out an audition tape to try to get a full-time job broadcasting. So if you want to do it, take your recording device, turn on the television set at home, and turn the volume down. And whatever you see, start putting it into words. Okay? It'll feel very awkward the first time you do it. The second time, a little less awkward, and so on and so on. Go to the American Legion field. Sit way down the line in left field, foul territory. You sit in fair territory, the umpires might frown on it. But practice, just practice what you see. Here's a swing and a ground ball to the hole. It's short, backhanded by Davis. Plants the foot, long throw, got him. Or whatever it is that you see. Start practicing that. Put inflection in your voice during certain times. Then, after you're done, go back and listen to it later that night. Okay? Stop and start. You're going to stop and start. When you hear something you like, play it again. And do that again the next time you are practicing. Okay? If you don't like something you hear, immediately eliminate that from your repertoire and don't do that again. Okay? Trial and error. Listen and either keep or listen and discard. And once you do that a few hundred or 1,000 times, you'll get a pretty good idea of what you want to be doing.
Yeah, no, that's very good advice. Um, when you're talking or going back towards when you first started getting into broadcasting, do you remember some of the things that you would used to do in the 70s and 80s when you were first getting in? Any specific habits or things that you would do to land some of your original jobs?
Practiced, and I would listen to tapes. I had an old cassette recorder. I would tape every game. Minor leagues, San Jose Missions, 1978 was my first real professional gig. I had done a lot of games in college, but I would record the game, and then I'd go back to the hotel at night, whether I was in Tacoma or Spokane or Tucson or Salt Lake City or wherever, and I would listen to it. And I would think, okay, I like that call. That was not bad. And then the next play, I would say, I don't like that. I don't like the way I said that. I got to be clearer. I was talking too fast. There's something that young broadcasters make a mistake of doing. They talk too fast. You have to enunciate every single word so the audience can understand what you're saying. You're a communicator. To be able to communicate properly, you must be able to be understood clearly. Okay.
Mm.
But that's what I would do. I would, and then the next night, you would try to implement the things that you learned the night before as you listened to your tape from the game before. It's a full time gig,
Yeah.
getting a full time gig, if that makes sense.
How did you develop one of your signature home run calls? Because a lot of times it's that's got a chance and it's gone. How did that come to be? Was that just natural?
Absolutely. When I say that ball's got a chance, gone, I was actually just buying time. When
Uh,
a ball is well hit after you've done thousands and thousands of games like I have, a ball is either going to be a home run or it's going to be off the wall, it's going to be caught, one of those three. Okay. Uh, because it's hit well. And the way it jumps off the bat and the way the outfielder goes back, it's got a chance.
yeah.
So I'm buying time by extending the word chance. I'm watching to see what the ball does. The fielder goes back, he makes a jump, he leaps up. Did he make the catch? Or was it over his glove? Is it off the wall? Is it gone? So that's really the origin of that extending the word chance. People think I did it to make it kind of a unique home run call. That
Mhm.
turned out to be the case, and I'm happy for that. But I was just buying time. That's all I was doing, wondering what the ball was going to end up doing.
Yeah, no, like you said, sometimes, especially in baseball, when there is a moment like that, you want to jump up, you want to jump over yourself to try and call the play before it even happens, and you got to give it a chance to just chill and take a moment.
That's right.
One thing I've also wondered is, especially now, I don't know how involved you are with social media, but I know that it's become a big part of obviously sports. What kind of changes have you seen over the course of your broadcasting career going into now the digital era?
I think a lot of the younger broadcasters are much more into the social media than I am. I'm from a different generation where it was not even on the radar when I started. You figure I did my first games in college in 1972, 73, way before the internet, way before uh, Twitter or anything, Instagram. It wasn't even talked about or thought about. So as a result, I was well into my career when these things came along. And if younger broadcasters use them, and if that's what the audience likes, I say keep on doing it. That's fine. I prefer just to keep on doing things the way I've done them because they've been a success. And I mean, I've won quite a few awards, and I've spoken at Cooperstown, and that was a tremendous thrill. And I feel like I don't really see why I should make any drastic changes. I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying, as a matter of fact, I've done pretty well doing it the way I've done it. So why would I change? What's the saying? If it's not broken, don't fix it. That's kind of the way I look at it. But for the younger generation, if that's what they think will make them a more effective or successful or a popular broadcaster, go ahead and do it. That's fine with me. But for me, it's just not something I ever really uh, delved into too deeply.
You mentioned, with Carrie and Brickhouse, what's it like being a Frick recipient like those two, and what was it like, working with them earlier in your career?
Well, I did work with Harry.
Hmm.
Fun. Jack, I was on the air with Jack Brickhouse a few times, and he was very, very nice to me. And I love both of those guys. They sensed, and they both went out of their way to say how much they liked what I was doing. And they said, "You're on the right path. Keep on doing it. Keep on doing it." And they could tell. I think when you have passion for something, as I do, I can see it in others as they could see it in me. So, I loved Jack and Harry. And what was the exact question again? I kind of went off on a tangent there, Jackson.
No, it was just what I was wondering what it was like working with them, and then
It was
having
great.
the honor of being a Frick recipient and being inducted into Cooperstown.
It was unbelievable. It really was. I'm so happy and so proud to have been there, and it was exciting. My wife was there, and my daughter, and my brother, and some friends from college, and a high school basketball teammate, and it was just the thrill of a lifetime. My partners were there: Ron Coomer and Zach Zaidman and Tom Ricketts chartered a plane
Wow.
from Chicago to go to Cooperstown, and Crane Kenny was there, and Mitch Rosen, and Mitch runs the radio station, and just all these special people. And I was treated like a king, and I get emotional when I think about it because it was so special, and I would wish that for every baseball announcer, knowing that it will not happen for the great majority. But boy, for the ones who do, bless your heart, because it is the thrill of a lifetime.
I'm sure to be recognized like that, especially on such a large stage, has got to feel just amazing, especially after all the, time and hours you've put in, not just broadcasting, but, doing broadcasting myself. I understand the amount of research and how much you have to be involved with the statistics and the game planning. And I know how much goes on outside, and I'm sure for all of that to come into fruition, that was last year, correct?
Yeah, you think about that. You think about way back when, even. You think about your parents and your
Mhm.
childhood playing Little League and
Yeah.
being on a championship Little League team, and Pony League and Colt League All Star World Series. And yeah, you go through all these emotions and all the people and all the thrills that you've had. And then you think, this is what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
And to be able to have this kind of success with something you love,
Yeah.
it makes it even more special. So maybe that's one reason why I got there, because I do have such a passion for sports and for performing and broadcasting. And I don't know. I don't want to overanalyze it. I'm in Cooperstown,
Yeah.
darn happy to be there. And Bob Costas put it very well. He said, when you are inducted into the Hall of Fame, it's not just for a lifetime, it's for all time.
Wow. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Um, I forgot what I
Jackson,
was
I'm going to have to get scooting here. I have an appointment in about 15 minutes, and I try not to
understand.
break too many of the speeding laws here in Chicago. We do have some pretty good law enforcement officers.
Well, I have one more question I was getting, or two. One
Okay.
would just be if you have any specific favorite memories that stand out other than the World Series. And then the last one I would have is, are there any recent Cubs you can think of, Rizzo, Bryant, Hendricks, maybe, that could have a future career in broadcasting?
That I can't say, because I'm not sure what level of necessity they would feel to work. I
Okay.
think some of these kids make so much money, and bless their heart, I am happy for them to do that. But if you've already made 50 or 60 million dollars, do you really need to work the rest of your life? Probably not. I hope you don't. But
Yeah.
uh, I could see any of those guys that you mentioned going into it and being successful. What was the first part of the question?
Just if you had any final favorite memories or
Favorite
things that
memories.
stood out.
I would say just working with Bob Euchre in Milwaukee, and Ron Santo and Ron Coomer and Al McGuire and Harry Carey, just being on the air with these people. And the World Series was the ultimate. The National League Championship Series was also special. The Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game, unforgettable. Um, just the daily joy of working at Wrigley for the best fans in the world and the greatest radio audience you could ever possibly have. And just to think that here I am, and I'm still healthy, and about to start my 30th year with the Cubs. I'm just overwhelmingly grateful that I've been able to do it. And it almost sounds like I'm talking about somebody else. It's been that unbelievable to me.
It's been so awesome and an incredible pleasure to be able to hear from you and hear all of your stories and your memories and your experience. It's been, especially just as a Cubs fan, it's been phenomenal to hear from you. And I thank you for taking the time to talk with me. And congratulations again on your 10th Illinois Sportscaster of the Year award.
Well, thank you for that, Jackson. You're very welcome for this. And I think this has been a good rehearsal. Do you want to do the real thing now?
Yeah, exactly.